Good morning. Good Friday morning here. The sun's come up now that the time has changed. A little bit of wind outside. Nice autumnal day, the leaves scattering around here. It's very nice. There's a herd of deer in my yard. Pretty nice. Well, I guess they're next door now. So we're still holding our breaths over here. What a lot of fun this is. Crazy times. Crazy times. Hopefully we'll have a solution here pretty soon. So, but until then, I just wanted to say that locally here on Wednesday, of course, I couldn't find the topsoil, just the grassy part, for our Neolithic round barrow, and I found it. There it is. So there's the ditch where they took the earth from to pile up over the stones, and there's our little tarn, our little pond, our little lake, which is still active. So at some point in this period, once we're able to visit it, I need to put some reeds and some brush vegetation around here, and some reeds and brush all the way down the spillway coming out of there. Put a few trees in. I might pop an oak or two in, put the boulders in. All that kind of scatter needs to still go in, but structurally it's all set and it's ready, and you can see it's all cut into tiles. So that's good. I also worked on the medieval landscape yesterday. In fact, that's all I did. It was a lot of vertex welding and cutting and slicing. We're not going to get into that today, because today I want to try to plow through the code of the time travel portion of the game, because I need to come to a point where I can just jump straight into being able to time travel to any period I want, because I need to start hooking up all of this content we've imported into the time travel management systems, so I can start testing how just that time jumping aspect of the game works. Fortunately, I think it's a pretty straightforward process, but today is going to be refamiliarizing ourselves with that bit of code, because it's all spaghetti, because it's my code, and I only make spaghetti. So let's export this little bit here so that we can kick off the day with something positive. So we're going to kick this off into the landscapes. Let's make, we're just going to call this Neo, because I seem to be dumping Neo not in its own folder at all. I'll need to fix that. Neo topsoil. I can't spell this morning, that's fine. I've been binge eating, apparently, which means that this morning was real hard to get up, because it felt real bad, felt really gross. I can't imagine why I've been doing that. It's not usually my sort of thing, but my son and I yesterday, single-handedly together, if that makes any sense, devoured half a pizza each. Wow. So, made this morning a little bit more difficult than it needed to be. I don't know why you guys needed to know that, but there you go. Just as a reminder, the background music, if you can hear it at all, is from Muse Open, museopen.org, which provides copyright-free streaming music. And it's a good site. High-quality streaming classical music. It's hard to find high-quality classical music, quite honestly. But this is pretty good. So, and also I'm recording this right now, so I'll be posting this up on YouTube maybe later today or sometime tomorrow. So that's also a good thing to do if you're interested in catching up on this later for some reason, like you can't sleep or something like that. Okay, let's get back into my file system here. Let's stick those Neolithic landscape topsoil tiles back into the project. I just have to remember where I'm keeping everything. Off to a slow start this morning. Here we are. Okay, let's jump into the game. Here come the topsoil tiles. There's our little Anglo-Saxon church sitting on top of the curbstones of the little tomb. We'll put this little church away. What's that look like in game, by the way? Oh yeah, we had this terrible shadow bias problem. Okay, so let's get that landscape going. It's not in buildings, it's in landscapes. All right, let's just fix our import settings. Calculate those normals, base them on the angles, base them on a 0 angle so that we get the low poly look rather than the Phong shaded. Remap the material to our workhorse material. ASE, when I call them ASE Vert Color Box Clip Dither, ASE stands for Amplify Shader Editor. That's where I built this. Okay, let's stick those in place. Ta-da! There we go. That looks nicer already. Okay. Another thing I need to scatter throughout here is I need to scatter some daisies in. I've got a different way of doing that. Little tiny octagonal or hexagonal poly daisies. I need to stick them in. That's what I'm using the polybrush tool for. It's been probably a year since I've done that, so I need to reconstruct that workflow for myself as well eventually. But just adding some little daisies and stuff adds quite a lot of visual difference and interest to the project, so it's a good thing to do. And I've got tools for making sure that all those little daisies only count as one mesh per landscape tile, which is great. So just looking at the way this landscape renders here, because this is a regular grid laid out over this landscape here, and it's a regular quad-based grid for most of it, it has this interesting shading effect that gives it a grid-based shading effect. And I'm not 100% sure I like it, but I'm not 100% sure I dislike it. I was looking at some magnetometry of an Iron Age hill fort just Thursday. I was looking at the magnetometry, and I really like geophysical archaeological scans, especially mag, and it looks a lot like that. It looks like it's an archaeological landscape scan, which personally I enjoy, so it might stay in the game unless I figure out an easy way to make it look more kind of triangular-y low poly, which I suppose I could just triangulate the geometry and that'd probably break the facets diagonally across all of these, but I don't know. Probably not worth it. Nobody's going to notice. Okay, so we just got that one little bit of modeling in. That isn't really, like I said, where we want to be right now. We need to figure out how we can take advantage of the time travel code. Pardon me, please. We need to dig into the time travel code in here so that we can see how to take advantage of it to just kick us straight into being able to time travel without having to kind of earn it. So what I mean by earn it is that we look in our base scene here, I've got an object called inventory model holder, and it's got a few objects in it right now. And these objects, if I turn one on, we might be able to find it. There it is. So these objects are different artifacts or architectural fragments or other sorts of objects like that. This is an arc frag. This here is a super important artifact. Narratively, this is really, really important. These objects are objects that the player can find, and they're really important. So I've discussed over on the devlog of this that apparently what I seem to be making is a kind of a Metroidvania sans platforming, but with the idea of backtracking and object collection, sort of the timing in which you collect artifacts or objects, or if this was like a more normal sort of game, God forbid I ever create one of those, but if this was a kind of a more normal sort of game, you would have power-ups being collected. These are keys. So we've got kind of, these are keys to different time periods. So each artifact you collect will unlock your ability to travel to a certain time period. And of course, there's going to be a lot of duplication and overlap as you're able to travel around. But it's a complicated lock-in key system. I won't get into that. But this makes it a little bit like a Zelda dungeon plus a kind of Metroidvania, which I guess Zelda dungeons are sort of Metroidvania-y in terms of there's tons of backtracking, multiple paths through them based on which keys you have and which locks you have access to and which items in your inventory you have to allow you to traverse the dungeons at different times to get to different parts. So I didn't realize that's what I was making, but that does seem to be what I'm making. So that's what I mean by earning your time travel in this game. But I want to just be able to, this was one of my favorite objects. I really liked making this. By the way, as a sidebar, this is a real object in real life, in the real world, that I have held in my hands. I did not discover this, but I think it is a beautiful object. This is a scallop shell. In real life, it was an oyster shell, but scallop shells have a certain medieval significance. But it's filled with some blue paint. And at the Church of All Saints, North Street in York, which is one of the finest of its 19 medieval parish churches that are still standing. In this church, which is known for its magnificent medieval stained glass, which is undoubtedly true, but also the church wardens were doing a little bit of work because they had commissioned some brand new medieval encaustic floor tiles to be made, and they had them, and they were relaying the floor tiles in the North Chapel. And in the process of relaying the floor tiles, they found some fill dirt in some holes under there. Lots of holes in churches underneath the tiles because they're full of burials and other periods of work. Anyway, and some of the fill dirt on one of these little holes, probably not burial associated, it was probably just a slot for a foundation of some form. Anyway, in this fill dirt, they found a couple of oyster shells. And those oyster shells were filled with pigment, including a beautiful blue pigment. These were probably the oyster shells that the medieval decorators of the church used as their paint palettes, as their paint holders. If you think about an oyster shell, it's got that mother of pearl interior, which is nice and smooth, and also oyster shells were really plentiful. And it's just something, and they were big, they fit in the hand really nice. So you could just grab one of these, wash it out, and put your paint in that you needed to hold, and then you could paint. And the paint had dried, and we had something that looked like this, and it was stunning. It was such an immediate kind of connection with the past, and the paint was beautiful. It wasn't quite this rich. It was a little paler, but was such a beautiful color. So I had to model one and put it in the game. Anyway, there's a little sidebar. So, anyway, if you were to find this object as a player of the game, and the way you find objects is by rebuilding portions of ruined sites, and as you rebuild, you uncover more artifacts or architectural fragments. Uncovering architectural fragments gives you more rebuilding options on the site, so you get more building pieces from different periods within the site, and so it's good to find those and collect them. So it's good to explore. It's the motivation for exploring, and also, of course, the motivation for exploring is finding artifacts, because artifacts allow you to time travel. When you find an artifact, that modifies a database, and based on your database entries, that gives you the ability to travel. So what I need to do is I need to figure out where that code is, so I can basically go around having to actually find the artifacts that I've scattered so far in this scene, and I can just kind of automatically cheat my way in. So I need to create a cheat code just so that I can test and time travel to any period I want. So I need to dig into that code. One of the other problems with that, with this, not problems, but one of the other kind of rules of the game design of time traveling is that you may travel to any time period that an object was created in, but you cannot, once you travel to that time period, if that object or any other artifact in your inventory existed in that time period that you travel to, it no longer becomes available for you to do time travel in. So this scallop shell, for example, let's say is 14th century, and you find it in the 20th century as well. So you're in the 20th century, you open up a time travel portal, which is based on kind of a wormhole, so it's got two ends to it. It's got the time you're in and the time you're not in, and you can leap back and forth between those two ends at will once you've opened up that connection. So you would have a connection back to, let's say, 1350. So you have a 14th century connection with this scallop shell and its pigment. So you could jump back to 1350 and this scallop shell would disappear from your inventory. Now the wormhole would still be open, so you could jump back into the 20th century, and you could jump back and forth between the two to your heart's consent. But if you jump back into 1350 and you wanted to jump further back in time, for example, if you wanted to jump back to the Roman period and you knew you had a Roman ring in your inventory, that Roman ring, because you might have found that Roman ring, let's say, in the 22nd century, that means that Roman ring existed from the time it was created in, let's say, the year 275. It existed from that moment somewhere in the universe as a ring all the way up until you found it in the 22nd century, which means that you cannot use that ring to, you can't use that ring to travel to a period in which it already exists. So I guess you could go backwards. Let me rephrase that. Anyway, the rules work so that different items disappear from your inventory, which lock out your ability to time travel just kind of willy-nilly based on one artifact, essentially. Because if the artifact exists in the time period you're in, so it existed in the time period you're in, therefore it disappears from your inventory. So if you time traveled back to the Bronze Age, that Roman ring is in your inventory, it suddenly becomes available to use for traveling. So you could travel to the Roman period from the Bronze Age because that ring didn't exist in the Bronze Age. So, and this is a kind of a conservation of matter based rule in that you're not going to duplicate objects. You're not going to duplicate the matter of an object if you travel into a period in which it exists in the past, which raises questions about who you, the player, are. Okay, let's actually dig into some code. I don't even remember where I keep the code. So let's go look at it. It could be any one of these. I believe I've actually got a time travel manager object. Timeline system. Let's start there. Time travel manager script. Here it is. Let's take a look at this and see if it's making any database queries. So we're just opening the script here. I'm going to start digging through it a little bit. Because what I need to make is I need to make the ability to have objects that just allow me to break that rule of conservation of mass and to time travel to any period whatsoever. These are going to be cheat objects for bug checking and play testing. So let's see if we're making anything. This is just managing the cameras, because we've got different, when you time travel functionally in the game, what you do is you're actually loading two versions of the world, and they're actually layered on top of each other but because of the layering system, you have two cameras. Each camera is rendering a different time period, and there's no overlap between them. And so when you jump back and forth, you're able to do that between either end of the wormhole pretty much instantly, and that's because you already have that time system preloaded. And there's a clever little loading hack in that you can only time travel to a new time. You can only do that through your inventory screen. So while the inventory screen is open, once you select an object to time travel to its period, it takes just a little while for that inventory screen to close, and at that point, while it's closing, it loads in the data that it needs to for that new period and unloads the data that it doesn't need anymore. So that's fun. So that's what's happening in this a little bit. So what is it going to be broadcasting here? Hello, setup time B, messenger broadcast, build holes. That's a terrible function. That causes lots of trouble in the code. When I rebuild the code, I'll be able to fix that a little bit better. Okay, none of that is giving us a whole lot of help when it comes to time traveling. Since conventionally in mouse and keyboard games, the space bar is to jump, in this one, it jumps you. It's key code space, you jump. You don't jump in space, you jump in time. Just a bit of fun there. Cutscene check date. We have quote-unquote cutscenes in this game. Okay, so that's not working. Okay, so this sets the active end of the wormhole and the one you want to travel to. It sets your current date. So that's good. Let's look into our inventory manager, because I think in the inventory that's where this whole thing gets going. This is another monster script. So here's our SQL statements. So what happens when we open the inventory? Where is it actually digging into these SQL statements? Frag artifact. Okay, artifact. All right. It's been a long time plowing through my spaghetti here. So in the artifacts populate function, that's where it's using the SQL statement. And this is where it's populating our inventory. So, query first record. Record exists. Let's go back to this and see what our SQL statement is. Select everything from artifacts where artifact ID equals this. So somewhere I know it's based on artifact ID. What I need to do is I need to set up a bunch of dummy artifacts in the database that are just purely, they're not real artifacts, they're just time periods to allow us to travel. Okay. But now how do we know that those artifacts are in our inventory rather than just an artifact in the database? Okay, that's interesting. So just trying to figure out how I built this, how I structured this code here. So the artifacts frags populate. This populates the inventory. Where else is this function called? Okay, it's called in the switch inventory, and it's called in the artifact add to inventory. Where's artifact add to inventory called? It isn't called at all. That means it's called externally. Well, it isn't actually if it's not showing up at all. Okay. I'm just trying to see if this fade in inventory UI is where we get to call the population of the inventory. So what I'm trying to figure out is we have an inventory. An inventory has certain slots. The inventory looks suspiciously like the Zelda inventory, the Breath of the Wild inventory, sorry. We have all these slots to fill. The slots are individual artifacts that the player has collected. When that inventory menu appears, those slots for items that the player holds has to be populated with little thumbnail versions of all of those artifacts. So I need to figure out where that code happens. So this is where, when we fade in the inventory, okay, so we have two states, whether we're looking at arc frags or whether we're looking at artifacts. We fade in the individual elements. The inventory is showing. We look at Grand Central, and the inventory is showing there. Grand Central is kind of a singleton object. And so, and here's where we handle changing different settings so that we're no longer interacting with the 3D world, we're just interacting with the menu. We have stop time, pause game. Boy, I don't know where this populate. Where this populate thing is done. So let's take a look. Still keep looking here. This is one of those things that took me a while to build, and once I built it and it basically worked, I forgot how it worked. Okay. So, artifacts in inventory count. Where's this get set? Oh, is that it? Oh, that's all there is. Okay. So when you pick up an artifact, each artifact is a data object in space. So when you click on the collider in the game that represents the artifact, that collider has an artifact info script, which is just a script which just holds data about the artifact. And part of that is an artifact ID number. And so it just takes that one, which is just an integer number. It takes that one integer number and it adds it to a list of all of the inventory numbers that you have. And then when you run the SQL for this, it simply grabs every int from your artifacts in inventory list, and if there is a corresponding artifact ID number in your database, it pulls that artifact. Right. Okay, so really what I need to do is I just need to add some artifact IDs that correspond to some dummy IDs in the database. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. So let's keep looking for how this persists, because I don't want to try to add these numbers artificially. I think this might be persistent data. This might be saved in the player prefs, or might be saved in the save game. I don't know though, so I'm going to keep digging for this. So artifacts in inventory is a list. Let's see how this gets populated. It might be on a save or on a load. There we go. It's in report state. That's it. Okay, so report state is my save function. There's a report state in every script that needs to have its data saved. So the artifacts in inventory list is saved here. So what I need to do is I need to add the dummies to my database. I'm getting there, see? I need to add the dummies to my database, and then I need to go into the game once, and I need to manually, in the editor, add those corresponding numbers, and then I need to do a save game, and that will create a save game that next time I start up the game, I will load this, and it will load that list of numbers back in. Not complicated at all. Actually, I'm amazed that in 15 or 20 minutes, we were able to kind of reconstruct that process. So I've got to go grab the most current copy of the database, and then I got to remind myself how to use my database and how that's set up. But that's good, and that all lives in the timeline system. Does it? No, it doesn't. Where does that live? What? Inventory manager. Here we go. See? Artifacts in inventory. There it is. So we just need to add some objects to this and then save it. In fact, we might even be able to just hack an old save game, because I have no clue if the save file, how functional the save system is or the load system in this game is now, because I've taken apart so much. But that's okay. That's great. We could, yeah, good. Okay, I've got to go grab my database now. So that's more file work rather than work in Unity. So I might have a copy of my database just sitting here on the desktop. No, I do not. That's fine. Unity projects, res proto, assets. So I have a fantastic plugin in Unity. I've used it for years now. And it's called, oh gosh, what's it called now? Oh, this is terrible. Anyway, it's a SQL database interface, and it works so nice. And now I can't remember what the name of it is. Forgive me, developer. It's such a good one. We'll go find it once I go find my database here. Anyways, it uses a SQLite database, which is great because it's so portable. So I just got to go find my databases now. My shaders, script shaders, my fonts, textures, music, script. It's in here somewhere. My DBs, here we go. Okay. So there's the inventory. So it's a bytes array. So that's one thing to notice. So we're going to copy this. We're going to paste it onto my desktop here. And I think I have to change the extension on this. I can't remember because it's been ages since I messed with this. Like literally a year. Okay, it's a SQLite database now. Now I need to go figure out what my most recent SQLite database manager app is, because they keep changing. I used to have this really good one in Firefox as a plugin, but then it died when Firefox decided not to do plugins anymore. So I've got to go figure out which manager I now have. Is it SQL Pro? I hope it's not. That looks frightening. And it might be. Just going to keep digging here through my list of apps. Someday I'll learn how to use Marvelous Designer, by the way. DB browser. It's this one. Okay. Well, I'll bring that in when I need to. Okay, let's go open a database. Oh man, you can already tell that I haven't opened this in a long time. Not even since I upgraded to Catalina. Okay. Res Inventory SQLite. There we go. Hey, we're into our database. You bet you never thought we'd get into some database editing, huh? Okay, here's my artifacts table. My artifacts table has a number of fields in it. Most of them are text, which are terrible fields to deal with. But the real one that we're interested in is probably the artifact ID number. They all have words associated with them. That's another function in the game. The model's got a name, it's got a date, it's got some info about it. Where's it got the, somewhere in here there needs to be a reference to its thumbnail picture, I thought. Okay, well it's based on artifact ID, I guess. Let's go jump into our SQL really quick. In our time travel manager. Time travel manager? No, it's in the inventory manager. And look up our SQL string, our query. Here it is, all the way up at the top. Select everything from artifacts where artifact ID equals. Okay, yep. So, it's based on artifact ID. So let's get into this table. Check out what we've already got in here. So we've already got a few artifacts in here, which is nice. Artifact date is its kind of notional start date. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 test artifacts in here that lead you to different time periods. This artifact word set is a table which does get altered in the game. We make a copy of this artifacts table, and in the game it gets altered based on what the player has chosen for which word the player has chosen to describe this artifact. And that's part of a mood system for the world, which changes things like the world's weather, changes the saturation, and changes the music, and it also ultimately can change some of the more narrative and dramatic content that's in the game. So again, mood is a big deal in this game, and these are kind of the fuzzy words which control the game's mood. Let's add some new objects to the game. Okay, so number 7. Let's call it, let's create some periods. What periods do we have? Well, let's start with this one. Let's call this dummy underscore meso. So this will be our Mesolithic period. Artifact info. Travel to the Mesolithic. As a note for us, the artifact date on this one is going to be pardon me. The artifact date on this one is going to be a negative one. It's going to be negative, well, let's just do 11,000. Oh, there's the artifact image name. Okay, good. We've just got to grab. What are we going to grab that's going to represent what we've got here. We'll do the time capsule box. So copy that one, paste it in there. Great. Artifact model name. What's it gonna be? It's gonna be the time capsule box. We'll just let the box represent all of our dummies. 0 in the word set. I don't know what this filter, or the set word, that's the actual word that's set. And we will call this dummy, dummy, and dummy. Actually, this might be helpful if we call this dummy neutral. Whoops. Dummy positive. And dummy negative. We shouldn't have to do anything else. Oh dear, that didn't get set. Have to hit apply here. Nope, not that way. Misleading interface. Okay, good. I wonder if I can just duplicate this entry. That'd be cool. Wow, look at that. I can. That's great. So all I now have to do is fill out just this and this. Yep, and everything else can stay the same because these are my dummies. Okay, so the next period we want to travel to is dummy Neo. So travel to the Neolithic. Sorry, we don't have any paleo stuff. Sorry, fans. Neolithic. What are we looking at? 5,000. Okay, everything else is set, so that's good. What's our next period that we have in here? We've got Iron Age right now. So travel to the Iron Age. And let's not use tab. And what's our date on that one? Oh, about -200 maybe. Okay. Duplicate that record. Dummy Roman. Travel to Roman times. Roman times. I'm sure that's a proper archaeological and historical term. And we're going to give this a positive 200. Our next period, after the Roman period that we've been building here, is going to be A-S. So travel to the Anglo-Saxon period. I keep forgetting to hit that apply button. Okay. Oh no, right. Okay, we're fine. And what time period is this Anglo-Saxon period? Do we want to say 7th century? That's a little, let's do 9th century. After that, what other period are we putting in here? We've got a kind of Romanesque period. So a Norman period. We've got the medieval, I mean, you know, we're starting to split hairs here in the medieval period. What other models do I have in the game right now to check up on? We could do the Norman period. Because we do have that little Norman absent aisle on the church. At some point we might want to check that one out. So let's do 1100 as the date for that. And after that one, we're going to go jump straight into the late medieval. Yep. Travel to the C-15, which means 15th century. And we'll give it a date of 1450. Let's stick ourselves right in the middle of it. Why not? Okay, what other periods do I have now after the 15th century? Okay, late medieval. That's right. That's right. No time travel game would be complete without World War II. There is a World War II period in here. I've got an object. So we're going to look at 1942 as a nice kind of median date for that. We've got one more period to travel to. Kind of don't want to talk about this one or put it in here, but I do need this dummy. Let's be cryptic about what's going on here. This is like a major plot point. So keep this one quiet. Okay, so artifact ID 7 through 15. I'm going to actually get out a piece of paper and a pen, and I'm going to write down the artifact ID numbers for these different cheat periods of mine and their dates so that I know what I'm doing. Because I might need to use these for reference, and it's a pain to kind of do this in the database. Okay, so artifact ID number 7. Is the Mesolithic period, and it goes back to 11,000 BC. Neo minus 5,000. Object number 9 jumps straight into the Iron Age. Forget the Bronze Age. I don't have any objects for that right now. That's negative 200. Object 10 is our Roman period. Finally, history dawns. Just saying things to anger people of different periods of study. 11 is the Anglo-Saxon period, and we've got kind of year 800 as a nice happy medium. Artifact number 12 is the Norman period, and again 1100 as a nice happy moment. Wasn't a particularly happy moment in England. Number 13 is the late medieval period, 1450. Lovely time. No wars going on in England in the mid-15th century whatsoever. Fact check me. Go on. I dare you. And then 1942, which was, generally speaking, not great for anybody. And then the beginning. Okay. Good. Got my crib sheet. Got my database all set. Got the changes written. That's a weird database editor that writes your changes after you actually have to consciously tell it to write the changes. Most relational database managers write your changes the moment you make a change. That way you don't forget to type. You don't forget to press the save button, and then you lose all of your data updates. Besides, most databases are not updated manually. They're updated through ingest of broad swaths of information. Okay, so we're going to copy this right in here. So copy that file, jump into my DBs. Okay, see, the last time I altered this database was in November 28th, 2019. It was a year ago. Okay, move it to the trash. We don't want that anymore. Not the old one, but we do have to rename this as bytes, and the system should pick that one right back up again. Okay, I need to make a save game now. There's my scallop. We're going to keep looking at that one because it's pretty. That's a nice model. I'm so proud of that little model. I made this also on a car ride. That's another thing that's exciting, is that I modeled this polygon by hand while riding in a car across the great state of Colorado. And that was really fun. Okay. Where are we at now? I guess we got to play the game. And what I'm looking at is our inventory manager. Not the database manager, the inventory manager. Here we go. And it's this artifacts in inventory that I'm trying to update. So what's going to happen if we press play? Who knows? Let's press play. Well, what happens if we press play is that we sit and wait around for 15 to 20 seconds while the game initializes all of its vast amount of scripts that need initialization at playtime, which is something, like I said, I've been working on. I've been trying to strip out start and awake functions wherever possible. Okay, there it is. All right, let's add some objects. How many do we have to add? We've got 9. 9 to add, and their numbers are 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Okay. So we're over here. Now, my big question is, I can't remember. I can't remember how to save the game. Is it just Control S? Or should I jump into the inventory and save it? Look at that. It pulled those out of the database. That's good. Yeah. No idea how to, ooh. Yeah, okay. I think it's probably Control S. That would probably be what I did. Let's find out. Right, I've got to jump into my save system because I cannot remember what my save file hotkey was. Let's open up the save system. Left Control and S. Okay, I think I saved the game then. How do we load the game? Again, it might be Control L, might be my like hidden shortcut for that. Let's open up the file and see if that's what we did. Somewhere I wrote a crib sheet of all the keyboard shortcuts in the game, and yeah, left Control and L loads the data. Good. Okay, let's keep an eye on our inventory manager here. Loading up the game. Let it keep buzzing along. Okay, there we are. Game is live, so if I hit Control L, look at that. Look at that. The game loaded. It actually restored our last position point of view. That's a nice thing to see. But look, in the artifacts and inventory, we have 9 objects, and they're objects with the IDs 7 through 15. So if we hit the I button for inventory, and we go to the artifacts, there's our 9 objects. Travel to the Iron Age. Neolithic, Mesolithic. That's so good. Okay, I need to add one more thing to our database before we're done here, but boy, I'm pleased. I need to get rid of these buttons actually and just put a saved word into them. I'll make them all neutral. But that's so cool. That worked. Coming up with a way to hack our... Now the problem is I cannot save. I cannot overwrite my save file because all this stuff will be kicked right out because I don't have a kind of... I do have a save slots system, but you can see that my menu was a little bit wonky, so so I'd rather just start up the game and then just jump straight into this save file. And then we can start time traveling around, and I just want to see how that works. So that's way more progress than I thought we'd make this morning. We imported a whole landscape's topsoil, and we've kind of reconstructed in our minds how this works. So I'm just going to jump in and save one more thing in our inventory. Open with QGIS. That's cool. We don't need to use QGIS at this time. Open a database. Nope, not that one. There it is, right at the top. Just couldn't see it. Wasn't used to that artifact. Browser data. Oop. Database structure, artifacts. Browse the... Oops. Yeah, we can modify the table in there. We don't really want to modify our table. Instead, we just want a browser table. Okay, where the artifact set word is set, I want to just turn this into dummy neutral. All right. Copy that. Paste it. 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 Good. Save it. Get out of there. Copy it. Paste it. Throw away the previous version. Rename that one .bytes. Let's jump back into the game. Wait 10 to 20 seconds while all the scripts initialize. There we go. Make sure that we're in, yep, game time's great. Control L loads the game. I can confirm that we have our inventory restructured. Let's jump into the artifacts. Grab that guy. It didn't like that. All right. Okay. That's because, oh, right, I've got to do this for all of them. Okay. Anyway, we'll get our little open portal button here, And that should jump us back to the artifact date, 7,500 years before present. Marvelous. Okay. Guys, it worked. It worked. Okay, that's great, and it's time to call it a day. So, oh my goodness. If you just heard that thundering Harley drive by, that's a guy in town called Gage, and he has no job or employment, and so he just drives his Harley around town all day, and he's starting at 7:20 in the morning. Nice. He may have a job, but most of the time he just drives it around. So everybody's met Gage, our local hog. Okay, with that little bit of completely unnecessary information, this somewhat scattered stream, we'll call it a week. Hope you enjoy your weekends. I hope by Monday, when we're streaming again, we've got a kind of resolution to current events going on in America right now, and I hope it's peaceful. So have a great weekend, whatever you're doing, and we'll see you back here on Monday. All right, time to open up the old OBS here. Not that one. Oh, come on. There we go. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend.